at God Stories Radio are reaching out to you and your business to sponsor us for as little as $10 a month. We need you so that we can continue bringing hope, comfort, and encouragement through the power of the Christian testimony. By your business blessing us monthly, we are able to bless others weekly. To sponsor us, email godstoriesradio@gmail.com. And you don't have to be a business to be a blessing. Visit godstoriesradio.com to donate securely through PayPal. Just press the button.
You're listening to the God Stories Radio podcast with Mike, Fritz, Trish, and Tina. Listen to us live on the Mixlr app. Also, be sure to follow us on iHeartRadio, and you will never miss an episode.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to God Stories Radio. This is session 147. I'm Fritz.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Tina.
147, Mikey.
147. A couple more will be the 150.
I know it, right? We've got to do something, spaghetti dinner or something for.
Don't talk crazy now.
For the big 150.
150.
What's going on over there, guys? How you been? How's your week been?
Well, we're in Florida, and it's like we're in some northern state somewhere.
Oh, you're not kidding. Wow.
Well, I think it was 33 degrees when I got up this morning.
How much? 30?
33.
Wow. 33. Who'd have thunk it?
Really? And the night before I heard it raining, I thought it was raining, and I knew it was going to be cold, and I expected to open up the blinds and see snow, but it was rain.
I know. Matthew looked out the window the other day, and he goes, "Mom, it's snowing." I'm like, "No, buddy, I'm not going to fall for that."
I don't know. The conditions were almost right.
They still are. If it rains tonight.
A couple of those nights at Disney's, I thought it was going to snow.
I bet
that
you
was
did.
Frosted over, man.
Yeah, I bet you did. I did have a pretty good layer of ice on my windshield this morning that took quite a while to defrost off.
Of course, you're high tech now.
I know. I had to figure it out, though. I literally didn't know what button to push.
You know what buttons to push, but I mean, the car and all.
Ooh.
No, I'm just just saying. But anyway, man, we got a great guest tonight. We're going to get to him in just a minute, but I know we got some shout outs.
We do.
I can't wait to hear. Who's doing that? Who's got that? You got that, babe?
Yep. So we got Joshua Shute, who liked us on Facebook.
Thank you,
Joshua. Thank you so much.
And Reginakanth, I'm so sorry. Reginakanth Chari. I'm so sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly.
Thank you for liking us on Facebook.
Amen. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
And Anna Reynolds.
Anna Reynolds, thank you.
Anna.
And I know this guy, and so do you, Jeff Orcutt.
Oh, last week's guest.
Jeff Orcutt. He'll always be Pastor Jeff to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Pastor Jeff.
Man, what an amazing guy.
Yeah, he was. It was awesome.
Just everything that happened with AJ and just to meet him was just amazing. And I know AJ was smiling.
Yeah, he set it all up.
Yes, he did.
And just to let you know, we are all out of new Facebook likes, so like us on Facebook so we can keep it going, the shout-outs.
Yeah, right? Really? We're really out of the Facebook likes?
The new ones, yep.
The new ones, okay.
Need new people liking us on Facebook, apparently.
Yes.
It's nice to have people like you.
There is a new country listening.
All right.
I think we can thank Pastor Jeff for this one.
Yes, we can.
It's Bolivia.
Bolivia. He even said it before we left.
Number 65.
Number 65. Welcome, Bolivia, our friends in Bolivia, and we thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll be a blessing to you. It's been our only agenda from the start. So that's fantastic.
You had such a perfect lead, though. We were talking about pushing buttons, and you said I knew the right buttons to push, and you could have talked about the God Stories Radio donate button.
I could have. It is a new year.
It is.
And the tax man cometh.
Oh, he does, and sooner than we think.
So if any of you guys, you heard the intro, we're looking, businesses or individuals that like to sponsor us for $10 a month, as my daughter says, you can sponsor us monthly so we can bless you weekly.
That's right.
It is.
But the tax man cometh, and we got to file like the big boys. So it's
all you have to do is to go onto our website.
That's right, and www.godstoriesradio.com and press the donate button right there. PayPal, it's secure. You get a receipt. We're 501c3, and it's all tax deductible.
Yes, it is.
Start the new year off on the right foot, I say.
Amen to that, baby. Thank you. So that's enough of that.
Yes.
But anyway, how about our guests? You do the honors,
yes,
Mikey?
I will. I can do that, I guess. The gentleman that we have here tonight, I'm on a security team at the church, and I saw him walk in with his wife every single week at church, and I didn't know the guy, but every week I saw him and his wife walk by me. And then the next thing I know, I'm leading a group on Monday night, and then he shows up and sits at my table, and I get to meet the guy, and just amazing, to get to know him and some of the things that I don't want to take anything away from it, so I'm going to give you Dan Archer.
Hey, welcome to the show, Dan.
Oh, it's nice to be here.
Let's see. Let me get you up here. All right. Check that. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Oh, testing it?
Yes.
Yeah. There we go. Now we should be able to hear you.
I'll try it again.
There we go. There he is. Welcome, Dan.
He's here.
It's good to be here.
So, Dan, it would be between talking with Gary Scott, and he's been on God Stories Radio a couple times, and he kind of actually was the one that kind of helped push you to say yes to this. He said your testimony was something to hear, so that's what we're here for.
Okay.
So let it rip.
Oh, what do you want to know?
When did you start coming to real life?
That'd be April of last year.
Okay, so
2016.
Are you new to the Claremont area? Or?
No, I've lived here since 2006.
Okay, and how long have you been a Christian?
My entire life.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well,
So
now
you-
people don't say that very
No,
much.
really.
So did you grow up with a family that, were believers? What were your...
Yeah, my mom was raised Roman Catholic. My dad was raised Southern Baptist. So when they got together and got married, they ended up kind of splitting the baby, and we were Episcopal for a short time. And I was christened in the Episcopal Church, and then I was raised in the Southern Baptist Church. And through high school, I ended up in the Methodist Church and went overseas when I got in the military. It's a non-denominational church when you're in the military. So I was in that, and then came back stateside and got back involved with the Baptist Church. And April 2016, woke up one morning, and we've been traveling back to over in the Windermere area. I was a deacon at First Baptist Windermere, and left the church to help plant Redeemer Church over in Winter Garden. And once we had planted that church, it went on for about a year and a half, and then the pastor decided to move his family to Virginia. So the associate pastor took over, and the church kind of started to fold on itself.
Right.
So we went back to First Baptist Windermere, and we were trying to get to our class. We had a great instructor. His name was Ron Perry, and Ron Perry was phenomenal. He was very well versed in the Word. He could catch your attention and keep it. And so we'd go to class and then go to church after that. And one morning we woke up, and there was no way we were going to make it to class on time. So we were in two separate vehicles, and I called my wife and I said, forget it, I'm not going to try to drive back roads to get there. There's that big monster thing up on the hill, that real life. Let's just try that. And so we went in, and Pastor Justin was up on up the pew, and he said, started preaching, and he pulls out Legos.
I remember that day.
and he had the Millennium Falcon,
Yes.
and he broke the Millennium Falcon. And I had just made that the night before at my house. Not the same one he broke,
Right.
but the same model. And my then 14-year-old daughter is sitting there. She's 16 now. And she was sitting there, and he broke it, and she goes, "Oh, we are so coming back." And she's a big Lego freak. So we kept coming back, and we got the little ones involved with the Kid Life. And we've just been consistent ever since.
Yeah, the Kid Life, it's a great program for those little ones, because everybody who's involved in the ministry, they're just so passionate and care about kids, you know. It just shines through, and they just want to share God's word with these little ones. It's so sweet.
I kind of feel bad for them. They got 3 of my little ones. So.
Well, I'm sure they're blessed. I'm sure your kids bless them. So, you know, you're here at Real Life, but tell us more about your Christian journey, you know, about, you know, what it's been like, what God's done in your life.
Yeah, what God has done in your life. I mean, usually when people say, and I've met a lot of them along my journey these past few years, that especially if they were brought up in the church, usually teenage, early 20s, they kind of like take a little walk away on their own.
Oh, I had a couple of those. I guess we go all the way back into the 80s. Is probably about 1986, or actually before that. So it's probably 84. I ended up getting baptized in a little tiny Southern Baptist church in Roswell, New Mexico. And it was more of I had my grandmother on my dad's side and my grandfather on my dad's side that were kind of pushing. So my sister had already gotten baptized, and I wasn't going to let her one-up me. So I took the dunk. And from that point forward, it still really hadn't set. I got into high school, got involved with United Methodist Youth, went on a bunch of the retreats, discovered the wonderful music of Michael W. Smith, and from that point forward, I realized between Michael W. Smith and DC Talk, which DC Talk
was Toby Mac a part of DC
Talk?
Okay.
Yes,
and
he
Kirk
was.
Franklin. So
yeah,
Kirk Franklin.
I love
yeah.
Kirk Franklin.
Yeah. Now you say DC Talk now, and it's only us older folks that know that. You know, the young kids are like, "What are you talking about?" So, I kind of became more of an outcast with my peers, and so I got more involved with FCA. I was a big athlete in high school, played football, ran track, cross country, golf, baseball, and then I ended up, and I also wrestled, and then I ended up meeting my ex-wife my senior year. She and I got married right out of high school. I joined the military, went overseas, and my daughter Ashley was born. And that it became very important for me to keep, you know, God involved. So we got involved in the non-denominational church over in Germany. And she won't remember any of this because she was so little.
Right.
But it was usually nighttime services that we'd go to on weekends, and it was at somebody's house. And so in 1995, I got orders during Christmas to come back stateside. Ended up supposed to come to Florida. And I was going to be at Herbert Field up in the Panhandle. I was cross-trained for munitions. I did nuclear and conventional weapons. And I was cross-training into education. So I thought, great, I'm going to Florida. This is perfect. And they called me on my way to the airport and said, "Hey, you've been diverted.
Oh.
We're sending you to Texas." I'm like, "Oh, great, where?" "Abilene." "Where's that?" They're like, "Well, you're a Dallas Cowboy fan, right?" "Well, of course I am." "Well, you're not too far from Dallas." "Yeah, 2.5 hours. So
Not too far.
and I was stationed at Dyess Air Force Base first it was a B-1 unit, and then I got moved over to the C-130s. And I had some very, very passionate Christian leadership that I was involved with. And then there were some not so passionate Christians, and some folks that weren't even Christian that were in the leadership that caused problems. And I became part of a Baptist church. It was Southside Baptist Church in Abilene, Texas. Had a pastor that came in. His name was Steve Young, not the football player. And
he'd be in the wrong part of the country, wouldn't he? San Francisco boy.
And he got me involved with Awana Ministries, and I became the game director for them. And so I started seeing a difference between my life in the military and my life at church. And as I was going through, I ended up coming down with a severe injury. I had a hernia, normal hernia like everybody has, but Uncle Sam left a piece of sponge in me when they did the surgery to repair it, which turned into 4 more surgeries. So I started making bargains with God, because about that time I'm like, okay, well, protect my family, help us to get through this. And my wife at the time, we had a deal. She was going to finish her degree at McMurray University, which is a nice Christian university there in Abilene. She's going to finish it, and as soon as she finished it, she was going to get a job, and I was going to get out of the military and finish school. And 2 weeks before graduation, she came up and said, "Hey, I've decided to go to law school." Great. So,
yeah, that's a lot of education.
Can I get out now?
Yeah.
And she said, no. She said, "I'm going to go to law school. I need to finish school." And so I started trying to get jobs and transfers up to Oklahoma City. And that's where she's going to school at. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And I was listening to Christian radio all the time. And I was making monthly donations. And I was doing everything that I thought that a good Christian should do. Mm-hmm. And I said, just get me up there. Get me up there. Help me get transferred. And as soon as I get up there, I will go in the ministry and do whatever you want me to. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, I got med boarded. They decided I wasn't fit for service anymore. So since I couldn't be deployed, they sent me to San Antonio, put me in front of a medical review board, and said, "You're out." Mm-hmm. And so I got out on disability. Mm-hmm. Moved up to Oklahoma City, got up there, changed the entire life around, started panicking and scrambling, looking for jobs. I was a call center supervisor for a little while. That was a lot of fun. Don't ever do it. And I ended up going from there and then going right into childcare. And I became a director daycare director for the YMCA, and then for Integris Health. And while I was doing all this, I kept saying, "Okay, God, I'm going to follow through and follow through." And I said, I think I'll just get my bachelor's in education. So I did that, and he let me go ahead and do it. And then when I should have followed on and gone into something with ministry, I decided, no, I'll get a second bachelor's in business. So I did that, and then my marriage started to fall apart. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay, I didn't listen. What do you want me to do? And I get told, okay, we're moving to Florida. That's where my wife wanted to practice. So I said, okay, great, let's go to Florida. And we got down here, and she started picking her friends and her career and everything else over the family. And we weren't seeing her anymore. Mm-hmm. So I confronted her and told her she was doing it wrong. She told me I didn't know what I was talking about. So I applied to law school. And I figured I'm going to show her. So I ignored my calling yet again. And I said, all right. I got through law school, and I got all the way through, started taking it real serious after the first year. Mm-hmm. I had basically pulled A's and B's in every course except one. I ended up struggling with the last one, got put on probation, and then pulled A's in my next year of classes. And I started realize, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to get a job when I get out of here. Right. And I now owe, over almost $200,000 in student loans.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
So I said, all right, what will you have me do? And it was like I was being pulled again. And I said, you know what? I've got to find a job. I'm going to go over here and teach. So I was going to teach in an alternative high school on the other side of Orlando. And I had the job pinned down, had everything going great. I thought, wonderful, kids are going to call me Dr. Archer like my dad. It's going to be wonderful. And
then you'd be a DA.
Yeah. Yeah, I already am a DA. But he let me go a little bit further, and I ended up ultimately becoming a law clerk for a local attorney here in town.
Right.
And so I gave up the teaching side, and I thought, okay, I'm being pulled in the right direction, and I started getting restored. My relationship with my daughter, Ashley, she's now 24. At the time of my divorce, she was 10. Mm-hmm. She had just turned 10 a couple of days after the divorce. And I ended up meeting this young lady after a series of young ladies that I had met. I met this one, and that's my current wife, Danielle. Mm-hmm. And she had a little girl at the time named Isabel who was just turning 4. And so I met her. We met online, and 2 days later we met in person, and she brought her daughter to Common Area. We were up at when West Oaks Mall was still a normal mall. It was nice.
Right.
So we were up at West Oaks Mall. I was in watching a movie. We were watching The Dukes of Hazzard. That ages this. So my daughter and I were watching Dukes of Hazzard. I get a phone call, and it's my wife Danielle is out at the McDonald's in the food court. And so I told my daughter, I said, hold on for a second, just watch the movie, I'll be right back. And I went out, and there she was with her little girl in the cart and the stroller. And I walked up and picked her daughter up, and she's like, she doesn't let anybody pick her up. I said, oh, well, I guess it's meant to be. And so later that night, she came over for dinner. We had a date, and we were together every evening after that going forward. And so I ended up a short while later asking her to marry me, and in May of 2006, on Cinco de Mayo, we figured we'd have the entire country of Mexico celebrating with us. We went ahead and tied the knot, had a very intimate ceremony, and a year later we had a big family ceremony.
Oh, that sounds familiar, honey.
Yeah, yes, it does.
And in the process, I led her to Christ. She knew of him, but she didn't
have a relationship.
No, and she told me the way I would talk about him, she wanted to have that. So she and I prayed, and she accepted Christ, and she ended up getting baptized at First Baptist Windermere.
Oh, okay.
And a short time after that, my daughter Isabel accepted Christ. And so I got to
baptize
I got to baptize her. So here I am as a deacon, and I'm getting to baptize my adopted daughter. And so that was the greatest memory I have of that church was I walk out into they had the curtains up at first, so I walked out into the waters, and I'm wearing this white robe because that's all they had, white robe and hip waders, and I've got my daughter Isabel standing in front of me, and they pulled the curtains back, and there I am with my arms out like this, and there's this little old white-haired lady on the just gasping. And I thought, oh, that was so worth it. And so I ended up baptizing my daughter, and everything was going along beautifully. Bought a house here in Claremont. I felt God really had me on the track he wanted me to. Here I am, an attorney helping people. I'm taking cases for less than most attorneys do, giving people representation and doing what I can to try to stay within budgets. And of course, looking the way I do, I don't look like another attorney. So I said, okay, great. This is where I need to be. And I kept feeling that pull. I didn't have satisfaction. I didn't have anything where I was supposed to be. And God let it go on for a little while. And then everything that could break loose and go wrong did. And it was about 5 years into my marriage. And at that point, I turned and I ran. I was not going to answer to him. My prayers were lukewarm. I would pray when I'd remember to. I just didn't focus on it. And here I am in the same time. I stepped away from being a deacon, but I'm still going to church. I'm still reading scripture. But everything was back burner. And through a whole series of events, which is an entirely different testimony, it would take us at least 2 weeks to go through. I ended up ultimately one day just sitting down with my wife, and we said, look, this is where it's wrong. And it took a lot of healing and putting Christ back center and focusing on things. And
I think you bring up such a good point there, Dan, because I think that happens no matter how strong of a Christian you are. You can get off center real easily. And a lot of times you don't even realize that you're getting off center.
Well, and it was funny. We realized very quickly that a lot of the people that were in the church, when we reached out, they ran faster than we did. They didn't want to be a part of it. But the people who were really there for us, with quiet contemplation and with, doing things outside the purview of everyone else, would come over and talk to us and spend time with us, and they cared about us. We knew they were praying. And through that process, I mean, we had just had our youngest daughter, Emma, and we had, during all this time, there were 2 more kids that were born. Mm-hmm. And so I've got 2 sons that ended up coming out during this period. Mm-hmm. And it's Jedediah and Noah. Mm-hmm. And we named Jedediah Jedediah because the name roughly means rooted in love. So he has become, almost our little focal point and our reminder. Mm-hmm. And then Noah, ultimately, I guess the reason God told us to give him the name Noah is because he was a bringer of hope. So, we're going on over 12 years now that we've been together. Even after God set everything straight, said, okay, I'm going to start restoring you. Mm-hmm. We started noticing things just didn't taste right. I started getting cases where I can't stomach a lot of things that I see other attorneys doing. I can't stomach the things that I'm hearing people do to each other. Mm-hmm. I'm getting criminal cases, and it seems that everybody that, more often than not, people don't want to pay for representation, or they want to use an excuse of, well, it was an accident or it was a mistake. Well, I'm sorry. Beating your child is not an accident. It was a mistake, yes. Mm-hmm. But you can't go back and say, well, give me leniency because, I really shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, there's a man in the news right now. He killed a 7-year-old boy. It was his girlfriend's.
I'm not on that case.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But it just really bad stuff that you see.
Yeah.
And I opened up to our small group about some of it. Mm-hmm. But it eats you, and you go home and you're jaded. Mm-hmm. And you don't have your attention span for the good things withers away. And so you're on edge when you're dealing with your kids, you're on edge when you're dealing with your spouse. You couple that with PTSD, mm-hmm. and it's not a nice place. Mm-hmm. And you have your outburst, and you sit back and go, okay, how do I fix that? Because the damage is already done. And so during this entire process, I'm still looking at it, I'm going, okay, I know you put me here for a reason, so I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. The money, when it comes in is nice. We're paying our bills. You haven't let us down. And then that darn Justin Miller. We're sitting in the middle of service, and I sit in the very back. I just tuck myself in the corner, and I sit back, and I'm listening to him, and he's preaching, and he's hitting it, and I kid you not, I'm almost 100% certain that he stopped right in the middle of the service, looked right at me, and said, the book of James tells us that if you have a calling in your life and you ignore it, it's a sin. And there's my wife, nudging me with her elbow in the ribs, going, see, I told you. So I got up and left, and somehow he still beat me to the front of the church. And so, I said hi to him, gave him a hug, and just kind of went on. And then the next week we're in service, and I have, I think that was the week that Pastor Sam was up covering, because I think Justin was on tour with Korn. Mm-hmm. And so Sam's up, and he's doing his coverage, and he hits on something with it, and I'm like, really, seriously, come on. I'm not here to be browbeat. So I got up and I left, and it was just a series of things after that just started happening. So I said, look, that's it. I went up and talked to Justin. I said, okay, which seminary? And he's like, what? And I said, I'm looking into it because that's my calling, and it's on me. And so he said, I like Johnson University. He said, that's where my son is going to go. That's where I went. I said, okay, great. And he said, they have a program. You should be able to do it. It's like one night a week you can go to campus. And they're right in Kissimmee. I said, okay, great, fine. So I called them, and they said, no, you'd have to work at the church. So I felt defeated. I went back, and he said, Justin said, it doesn't sound right. Go talk to the guy that looks like Rick Scott over there. sure enough, there's Steve Bush, and looks just like Rick Scott. So I walked up and said, "Hey, Governor," and he smiled, and I told him what I was going through. He said, "Well, let me look into some stuff for you." He said, "It doesn't sound right to me either." He said, "But let me see." And I gave my phone number, and next week in church, and backstory, I changed my phone number in the process. So 2 days later, so the next week I'm like, "Hey, I haven't heard anything. Have you heard anything?" He goes, "Yeah, I've been calling you all week."
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, as a matter of fact, one of the senior execs from the university is here tonight.
Wow.
And would like to talk to you.
What a God incident.
And I said, "Okay, sure." So after service, we couldn't find him, so we waited. And after service, I sat down with this guy, whose name is also Dan. And so we joked around about our first names, and then I told him part of my testimony. And he said, "You know what? Master's in Arts and New Testament." He said, "I'm going to send an email tonight." And later that night, there's this email between him and the registrar saying, "I want, get him in." And so that was supposed to happen in August. And things didn't line up. We couldn't get transcripts and everything in on time. So we put it off. And as soon as I started going the way I needed to and pushing to get ready for school, anything and everything that possibly happened, possibly go wrong did.
Yeah.
Irma. Through the backtrack a little bit, in April of this year, right after we convinced my mom and dad to move here, and we were taking them back to the airport, flying back to Texas, both of my barns burned down. And we lost half of our livestock, all of our equipment.
Oh,
the only things that survived were my chainsaw and my tractor, and then some of our animals. And so we went through that whole process of grieving and taking care of the animals and raising a goat in the house with a diaper on, and it was a lot of fun. So we got through that whole debacle, and then Irma blows through and wipes out my tractor, and I go to use my chainsaw to cut tree off the tractor and burn my chainsaw up. So I'm like, "Okay, God, I give up." And so with all this happening, as I start doing it, now we're getting declinations from the insurance company. They're not going to pay for the tractor. As soon as I start committing myself to try to get into school, we had my truck transmission blew out for 4 times in a row. One of my dear friends, who's part of our group, sometimes, Brother Isaac, actually did everything. He was almost pulling what little hair he has left out of his head, trying to figure out why the transmission was not working on this pickup. And so ultimately, I had to splurge and get another truck. Then, on top of it, everything else that go wrong, we had my daughter got sick, had to go through medical procedures at Arnold Palmer. They were trying to figure out what was wrong with her and why she was so sickly. Come to find out, it's a condition that none of us expected anybody in the family to have, but it's because she's so tiny. She's got something called gastroparesis. So we have to watch, and of course that takes like dairy out of most of my diet. And then my youngest son has an egg allergy, so now my diet's getting adjusted there. So all these medical bills start piling up, and then we have the screen enclosure goes out, the pool pump burns up, and most recently, as we get the freeze, now we have our heater that is only 1.5 years old has decided to not work and shuts off at midnight every night. So it's everything that could go wrong on the outside did. And so I kept pushing through, and we did the online application, and I got everything in, and then I hit enter, and it said critical error. And I did it on another computer, same thing. So I finally called the registrar up and said, "Walk me through this, because it's not letting me do it." And she goes, "There's nothing on our end." And so stopped, prayed about it, and as soon as I prayed about it, I hit enter. Application went in. And then the 5 people that I contacted initially about, "Hey, can you do me a letter of recommendation?" 4 of them decided not to do one.
Oh, wow.
They came up with everything else in their life. So I had to last minute go and ask people to write them. And luckily, 2 folks from church very quickly, Joel Caldwell, thank you very much, Joel, and Steve Groves, a.k.a. Santa Claus, also went ahead and filled one out. And Steve's known me for 12 years, so those letters went in. And then my personal statement, sat down on my tablet, never had a problem. I do stuff in court all the time, never had a problem with it. I type out a personal statement, proofed it, let my wife read it, tried to hit send, can't connect to any internet email system. Not Yahoo, not Gmail, not Hotmail. I can surf the web, but I can't email myself my personal statement. So I had to get crafty. I prayed on it, and God said, pull your SIM card out of your phone, your micro, put it into your computer and download it to that. So I did.
Wow.
And got it uploaded, and then I went through 3 hours of everything going against me trying to email it from my work computer, and finally it got through. And then the academic advisor was going on vacation for a week and a half, and I still hadn't been loaded into the system. And so as of this afternoon, I am fully loaded in the system. I have my first 2 seminary courses.
All right.
So that's from the beginning to now.
Yeah.
Well, you got to know you're on the right track.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
That's unbelievable.
It is. But babe, I remember us going through a period of time like that where just nothing seemed like it would go right. And I am convinced it was because of, us being on the right track to trying to...
Oh, yeah. We were thoroughly challenged, especially in 2017.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. It really is. And, it's funny to hear you talk about all this right now, Dan, because I was just looking at the calendar today and filling in what 2018 is starting to shape up like. And I was putting on Fridays, we're starting this couples Bible study. And then on Wednesdays, Thursdays, we obviously have God Stories Radio. And on Sundays, we're teaching singles ministry. And I'm like, wow, we have a lot going on. And you don't even realize it because you're just doing it. But as you start looking at it, you start seeing you are not only being affected, but you're also affecting, other people out there. So...
Right, and Satan ain't going to sit back and just let that happen.
No, he's not. He's
going to stir things up.
Not only that, Dan said yes to coming over to GSR, and we know what happens to most folks when they commit to coming and giving their testimony. Things happen, and his heater goes out.
Yeah,
right.
And Hurricane Irma certainly hit us, too.
Well, weren't you supposed to be here at that time when Irma hit? And that's when all that other stuff we talked about happened.
That's right. Yeah, he was previously scheduled.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, Satan didn't want Dan on God Stories Radio.
No, he did not.
I had to have my wife call because we had both of them, the Master Oaks on our front gate. Irma blew them over sideways. So one fell over and blocked the gate, and the other one fell over the tractor. So.
Wow.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Which would have been great if I had the tractor. I could have moved the one that blocked the gate. But
right.
Funny, the last 2 things that remain, the tractor and the chainsaw, gone. Yes. And then the insurance doesn't even want to pay for it. Yeah. Add insult to injury there.
Mm-hmm.
Good grief.
That's okay. God's just clearing out all the old stuff to bring in the new stuff.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because sometimes he's just got to eradicate your entire past so that you can only focus on the future.
Yeah, but my tractor never did anything to anybody.
I know, right?
Had 194 work hours on that thing. That was it. We had just paid it off last November.
Oh man.
That's painful. Yeah.
Refinanced the house, paid that off, paid some student loans off. And then as I'm looking out at this crumpled piece of metal, I'm going, well, that's a wonderful $27,000 yard ornament.
Oh, gosh.
Wow.
Amazing.
It is.
So where do we go from here, Dan? We're going to do school, and then kind of what's the focus? Do you know?
Not sure what he's going to
Not sure.
To.
Okay. That's
but
fair
you
enough.
believe you're following your calling now?
I do, and hopefully this is going to. I know I'm in the middle of a spiritual battle now.
Geez, I don't know why.
Yeah, well, one thing that when you go through law school, and I think most of my contemporaries will agree with this, because a lot of my classmates will say, we hate to read after we get out. If you had a joy of pleasure reading before you went into law school, you read so much that you just don't want to pick up another book. And I would pick up plenty of books. I still have a ton of them that I haven't finished reading. I was reading The Eighth Kingdom. I ended up reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. There were a ton of them. We had a lot of the Bible studies my wife and I picked up. That we picked them up, and it was great. We picked them up, but I just couldn't get into them. And then through this process, I ended up with a book called 31 Prayers for My Wife. So I had that one, and I read it and pray over her. And then I have a couple others that are, the Chicken Soup for the Soul, and I'll read those occasionally.
That's a classic.
And then I'll still get into the Gospels, and I'll read. I've read all the way up through Deuteronomy, and then something will happen, and it gets put off to the side. And so now I've got this stack of textbooks, and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to have to read. I don't get to go enjoy the Old Testament right now. I actually have to start from Matthew, and my first assignment's due on the 12th, and I have to start reading all the Gospels and going through all the Synoptic Gospels and everything else, and start reforming my mind. So I think this goes right along with Scripture, where it says, "Do not conform, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." So
that's right.
Hopefully, we'll see what the fruits of this are as I start reading again.
Yeah.
But it's actually I ended up seeing it. It was by accident on Amazon. By the way, stay off Amazon because you'll spend way too much money.
Well, that's the truth.
On Amazon, there was a book called Guide for Spiritual Warfare, and a little leather-bound thing had a sword on the front of it, and I thought, well, let's go ahead and take a look at that. So I ordered the book, started reading it. It's mainly focused on Catholics, and it's a lot more of, you can't do this. There's these things called exorcisms. Oh, you can't do that because you have to be a priest and Catholic. And I thought, well, I don't remember the apostles being priests, so they definitely weren't Catholic, but they were casting out. So I take a lot of what it says with a grain of salt, but it does hit a lot of points about you are on a constant battle with Satan, and he is going to turn every one of his little minions on you and do everything he can to attack you. And it's really amazing to see all the little nuances, and they're not, demons don't come out just as as these horned creatures that are trying to devour you. And it's everything from the way the wind blows to the storms coming in the form of Irma to all of a sudden we have the worst freeze or the worst run of temperature in 4 years.
Where you're going, he's not gonna just let it go. He's gonna put up a fight.
I know, but the battle's already won.
Hopefully you're gonna give in, is what he's thinking.
I'm not planning to.
Babe, what's that Bible study that you got on the spiritual warfare? Who what's the name of the gentleman that wrote that? His name's escaping me right now.
Think
differently.
Differently.
Yeah.
James. I can't think of James in the word. James something.
Oh my goodness, it'll come to me.
Yeah. That was a great study.
Yeah, it is a really good study.
Exposed a lot of things for me.
Yeah. But just talking about the spiritual warfare and stuff, that's in that study. And it's a Christian study.
Right. Well, I think John Eldridge has a couple books on it and talks a lot about spiritual warfare as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Walk in the Word.
Walk in the Word. James McDonald.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. Dan, here at God Stories Radio, we were home of the shameless plug. So do you have, would you like to plug your business or anything about yourself, or maybe a small group you attend or anything like that?
I'll actually plug something other than my business. My wife Danielle has a company called Agape Services. She wanted to become an attorney, and I told her, if you go through law school, we're getting divorced. So she picked the greater evil and became a psychologist. So she is licensed. She's I think she's a LCSW, but it's more of a pastoral side.
Mm-hmm.
So she actually is plugged in with. She's tied in with some of the folks at the church and does counseling.
With Joel.
And she's supervising some of the students that are up and coming, working on getting their degree and becoming licensed for their supervision hours. But her main focuses are more along the lines of self-infliction and eating disorders.
Mm-hmm.
So she's very, very versed in that, and also in PTSD. So if anybody needs a good therapist or counselor, definitely reach out to Danielle Archer. That's right, I'm Dan, she's Danielle. We get that all the time. But reach out to her. She is a phenomenal therapist. She's listed in the church
directory. What's the name of it again?
Agape Services. And she does counseling individual. She can do pretty much any of the evaluations that are required by court if you find yourself sideways with probation or the law. And she does a lot of the, if somebody's just having all sorts of problems, she's tied in with a group called Talkspace, which is an online therapy group. So if somebody here local can't find her, doesn't want to reach out because they're embarrassed to, or even if internationally, some of the people that are logged on Talkspace are from out of the country, and she can do counseling with them.
Mm-hmm.
Does she have a website, Dan?
I think she does, but I don't have her business card, so...
No worries. I was just thinking maybe we could put a link on our business page, from the website, and where we could refer people over there, or they could see it and click on it and get there.
But if
at least get a phone number.
If anybody out there is listening and they need to get in contact, just contact us and we'll get a hold of Dan.
Can do.
All
Absolutely. Right. Well, we just appreciate Dan being here tonight, especially with everything that's going on with the heater and all of that, man.
Second time around.
Definitely going to link up and pray with you and for you, and especially in your endeavors in school and everything, man. I just wish you the best of luck with that, and I'm just glad I get to see you on Mondays every once in a while when I can make it. Anyway, and
well, you probably made it at this point more often than I have, so.
Well, at least I'll call you back. But anyway,
I keep telling Mike over here that I'll be there, and then something comes up. So, but then again, if I ever try to reach him by phone, just
no, call the ER.
I think that was 2 digs, Mike.
It was 3, I think. He's counting.
Listen, if you've got a testimony, drop us a line at godstoriesradio@gmail.com. We'd love for you to come in person like Dan did. But if you can't, we understand. If you're out of state, you can call in. Or if you just don't want to do that, you write it down. We've read stories or chronological events in someone's day that were just amazing. So godstoriesradio@gmail.com. Just send it to us, and we'll read it. We'll take it any way we can get it.
Yeah, you can tweet us, too.
You can tweet us on Twitter. We love it. And like us on Facebook, also iHeartRadio. If you like us on iHeartRadio, you'll never miss an episode. And now we are on Spotify. So if you prefer Spotify over iHeartRadio, some people do, you can like us on there and follow us. And
we also have Freedom Radio Networks.
Freedom Radio Networks. And you get Mikey 24 hours a day. Sitting there laying 4 o'clock in the morning in bed, and chat to Mikey.
Just don't call them.
Yeah, no. Exactly.
Okay.
I don't know what to call. Oh boy. Well, that about wraps it up, man, for session 147. I'm Fritz.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Tina.
God bless you all.
God bless.
God bless.
Okay.
Hi there. We here at God Stories Radio are reaching out to you and your business to sponsor us for as little as $10 a month. We need you so that we can continue bringing hope, comfort, and encouragement through the power of the Christian testimony. By your business blessing us monthly, we are able to bless others weekly. To sponsor us, email godstoriesradio@gmail.com. And you don't have to be a business to be a blessing. Visit godstoriesradio.com to donate securely through PayPal. Just press the button.
You're listening to the God Stories Radio Podcast with Mike, Fritz, Trish, and Tina. Listen to us live on the Mixler app. Also, be sure to follow us on iHeartRadio and you will never miss an episode.